got a lot to say. It feels like I'm carrying a 2-ton weight. I go to see a friend.
Hello, I'm Msgr Patrick Winslow.
And I am Father Matthew Kauth.
And we are speaking from the rooftop.
A podcast brought to you by 10 Books, in which we invite you to join our conversation out here in the open air,
where we look out upon the world around us from the rooftop of the church and share with you what we see.
Makes me wanna scream from the rooftop to the screen till I know.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We were having a standoff. Who was going to say good morning first? It was like the Wild West showdown.
I won. You conceded so easily. It's not like you.
I did. Well, I guess, yeah. Because it was an aggressive move, probably, to say good morning.
I think all of your Lenten disciplines this year has paid off. It's softened you.
Is that what it has? Okay.
The right way, and on all the right ways.
I think I was pretty soft on most of my Lenten disciplines.
Oh, well.
It's past.
So where are your thoughts these days?
My thoughts are on specifically how to live Easter. And I don't know if we've spoken about this before in years past. Maybe we did. But my mind went to, remember the Robert Hugh Benson books? There was one that was very popular when you and I were in seminary that we found called Lord of the World. It's the end of something sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's great. Everyone loves Lord of the World if they've read it. It was extremely prophetic. Even had helicopters in there before helicopters. And
they had kind of blimps.
Yeah, they were sort of strange, different. Yeah. But it's a book by Robert Hugh Benson, who was a convert from Anglicanism and wrote a number of books, historical fiction books, about the faith, certainly during the time of the Elizabethan persecution. But this particular one is about the Antichrist and how he is opposed by this particular priest in the novel. It's a fantastic novel. But then he wrote another one called The Dawn of All. And that's the opposite. It's sort of like the faith doesn't perish and Christ comes back at the end times kind of a thing. But the faith conquers. And this man kind of comes out of, for lack of a better term, a cryo-freeze, and is now living in the world that faith has conquered. And it's such a dud. The book is such a dud.
I didn't read that one.
Well, because no one knows it exists because it never made any popularity. Because we don't know how to live in victory. We know how to live in, we can have a big meal and then feel sluggish and slothful again, or whatever. But we don't know how to live in victory. And that, like Lent, we get, because I know I need reform and repentance. I know you need it severely. So like we get Lent, just the same. I suppose that people love reading Dante's Inferno, but they never get to the Paradiso. So I wanted to hear Msgr Winslow's top 3 tips for living in Easter tide.
Well, it's interesting that you bring this topic up because I wasn't directly relating it to how to enter into Easter more fully and completely, or for that matter, how to live in victory. But it does tie into it. And that is, I think we have to expand our imaginations. I think that our imaginations, if we don't deliberately push them, they put us into a bit of a ghetto of imagery. And the faith paints pictures of reality, of our life, where we're headed, the true context in which we live. And if our language and our images are, in a certain sense, exhausted, and I don't mean ours in like the larger churches, I mean ours in our personal, then I think, I think we don't really begin to go where no eye has seen no man has heard, we just stop. I have an image, for example, of Gethsemane, praying the rosary. But I don't, when I pray the rosary, I don't stop there. I try to go more and more. I try to stretch my imagination to enter into it more fully. And it's hard. It's hard work. When I reflect on the resurrection, I have sort of my go-to thoughts. I have my go-to imagery. But if I don't try to push it past that, not to create anything new, but rather to enter into the reality of it all at newer and deeper levels, it requires the use of my imagination to engage with what we believe. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about the rosary, because it assists in that. And so I to tack it back to your question, how might we better live in victory in the light of Easter glory? I would say one thing is to practice expanding our imaginations. This certainly is the case, and anytime I try to envision heaven, how do you wrap your head around heaven? How do you see what no man has seen? How do you try to understand what no man has heard? What God has in store for those who love Him? It's an exercise of imagination, and this is where I think, as we'd mentioned, I think previously in our last recording, the assistance of books helps. It pushes us, it feeds us in a way that stretches our imagination and brings us into textures of life, experiences, and so on that we don't necessarily have ourselves.
Right.
It allows us to see more, and it allows us, I think, to explore more the reality. So that's probably my first thought relative to how to enter into the Easter glory more completely, more fully. What are your thoughts on that?
I remember one Easter morning. It must have been one of the texts of the liturgy or something, but where St. Paul says to set your sights on the higher things, or set your vision, as it were, on the greater things. Maybe it was 1 John. It could have been 1 John. I can't remember what the passage exactly was, but I remember it directing my gaze. It became a leitmotif for me that Easter, that I need to keep thinking about higher things. Because then I'm certainly focused on passion. I'm certainly focused on my own sinfulness and my need for repentance, and shall we say a lower thing. And then Easter trying to focus on a higher thing, because I have to prod myself to not just to want to do the good because I'm fearful of the penalties that accrue to me if I don't. Obviously, we've all spoken about the difference between a kind of servile fear and a filial fear, but I want to be attracted, and I can't get attracted. Like, the will doesn't fire and the sense appetite doesn't fire unless I present it with something. So, pursuant to your imagination description, that if I'm presenting to myself life with Christ, what would that look like? What would it look like after he rose, and the apostles would see him here, there, and everywhere, and he's sort of like so fast, he shows up and he's gone, etc. What would that excitement be like to see where he's going to show up next, and to sort of overlay that onto my current existence with him by virtue of grace. But even then, to think about eternal life with him, because I think it's hard for us to desire eternal life, even though we know it's Christ. And as St. John says, eternal life is this, to know you, Father, and Jesus Christ, whom you've sent. The more we love him, obviously, the more we're going to want to be with him. But then it's hard for us to think, what am I going to do? And I think we have this image in our head typically of a disembodied sort of reality, where we're just sort of filled with light, staring at light. And so we're naturally bored by it. I mean, I have lots of thoughts on the beatific vision. I have to teach that in one of my courses, and I don't necessarily want to get into that. But that is the thing. I want to be drawn. I want to be, you and I spoke about some years ago that this time in the life of the church, Easter, Pentecost, etc., certainly Pentecost time, is the nature of having life in the Spirit, where we're attempting to notice those soft touches of grace to live with God genuinely. Because if I think that I'm going to live with God once I get this thing done, or once I get that position or that place, whatever else, it's never going to happen. Like, grace only exists right here, right now. And to be attentive to those things, then to enjoy, genuinely enjoy the movements of God that take place in a given day. Maybe I'll just end that section by saying that I had a notebook that I got when I went to live in Italy. Not because I wanted to make a journal. I'm never much of a journaler, nor do I see much of a, for me anyway, much of a profit in doing so. But I wanted to try to track the graces. So like I tried to look every day to see what God was doing and then to write them down. At the top of my notebook, I put, non moriar sed vivam, et narrabo opera Domini. I will not die, I will live. And narrate, I love that, narrabo, I will narrate the works of the Lord. I think that makes life so much more interesting, to be super attentive to what his activity is every day. And then even to jot it down and to say, he did this today, he pushed me here, he showed me this, I got this grace, etc. To live, as you said years ago, life in the Spirit.
Yeah, I think that's really important to see, as you say, these gentle touches of divine providence in one's life. For me, I rely upon them in the sense that when I face bigger questions, I go back to those touch points, and I say, I know this is
that's the baseline.
I go back to it, and it keeps me tethered. And over an arc of time, you develop some of these, or rather, you materialize some of these data points in your life and your path, and once they're situated and they're discerned to be authentic, then you always track back to them, because it helps you discern the present. Without it, it's extremely difficult. At some point you have to throw a data point down, especially in the life of faith. The moment you start to conscientiously live your faith, that's a concrete data point. And no doubt in that context, there are things that were providential, and it doesn't take too much imagination to see them.
Yeah.
And to keep track of them in a book. I've never done it to that degree, but to certainly keep track of them in your mind, especially those that were very consequential. I think they help you navigate the present, which brings you into the future.
Yeah, and I suppose like learning anyone's character. Like I've known you now for, gosh, I don't know how many years, 20, almost 30 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I do it out of
that
charity.
wasn't hard for you to answer.
It's charity, and it's a desire for me to get to heaven.
Just a statement.
But imagine 30 years. It's like we speak it with Gober, like we both have postdoctoral degrees in Goberology.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a pretty easy study, let's be clear.
It is.
It's not a hard field.
No. The theses write themselves.
It's true. But, you get to know someone and how they're going to react to things. And you, on the one hand, because you and I are homo viator, right? We're the man on the way. You have to let people grow past their previous deficiencies or ways of seeing, and you help them to grow, et cetera, and kind of put them in a box. But nevertheless, there's certain parts of us that are not liable to change. Our facial expressions and manner of speech, and what we manifest when we're sullen or excited or whatever. And so we learn the character of the other person pretty well, such that you can pick up on the smallest things. Any couple, any friend knows that experience, and you can get them wrong, but for the most part, you don't. You know something's there, even if you misjudge the actual cause of it. You know something has changed in the person, whether they're speaking about it or not. And that was what I found in trying to track grace, is that I saw patterns, I saw ways of behavior that mapped pretty nicely onto my own read of the scriptures. And it was just for lack of a better term, it was just so cool to realize that and make it so transparent to me that I'm dealing with real persons who have, I don't want to say character. I mean, God doesn't have a character in that sense, but the persons of the Trinity, but certainly in his humanity there, he had a way of speaking, he had a way of inflection, he had a way of walking, he had a way of looking, of facial expressions, etc. And the apostles got to know that, to see that, to study that. And then I would imagine for them how weird it was, after the resurrection, when he didn't show up in the same manner. St. John says, we knew him that way in the flesh, we know him so no longer. So John sees him on the island of Patmos, as this sort of incandescent flame that falls on his face, but nevertheless, his chosen activities would have somehow mirrored the way he behaved, because otherwise, why say, Philip, when you've seen me, you've seen the Father? So the way he acts through his human nature is the way God acts. And then to have some experience of that in my own life, where the things I was noticing and picking up on, like unto a friend, like that's the way you do things. That's the way you do things.
Sort of a modus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so for example, I'll give you one modus in my life relative to how God acts. I'm extremely hesitant and nervous when I receive spiritual consolation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when I have received it. Now, I don't necessarily believe this to be the case for everybody, because as we've talked, I think God, on a personal level, communicates in the mode of the receiver. So I think that there, just as there are different languages, same person, as you say, or same one God, and there are different languages. There's certainly one that's developed in my life relative to the inspiration of God, and that is typically, maybe 9 times out of 10, if I get a profound spiritual consolation, it's because I needed it for what was going to follow. It's a bit of the pattern of Tabor.
Yep.
What Peter, James, John, here, take a look. Here's how I am transfigured on Mount Tabor. You don't know this, but in a couple weeks, you're going to need this to get through my crucifixion.
Right.
And in many ways, I think that has happened, or at least that pattern has happened in my own life, where those graces are given and they're not given cheaply.
Yeah. Have you had any consolations lately?
Mercifully, no.
What are you trying to tell me?
People complain about like a dry, arid spiritual life. I'm at a point where I'm like, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing.
Give me the dry. I'll take the dry.
Yeah, I've had the downpours of rain, and it's followed by a hurricane, and it's tough.
Well, we have the consolation too. Like, even if you don't have consolations at times in the spiritual life that are affective, if you develop the habit, you always have the consolation that is intellective, right? Then it sort of bleeds into the affective. In other words, like what you and I do here, is in large part whatever we happen to be thinking about. When you're thinking about the imagination and expanding the field of vision so as not to become stagnant, and to see God in his activity, That's just something that you were doing in your own meditative life and contemplation. And then we have the opposite, which we spoke about in terms of literature. Really reading good spiritual authors and spiritual treatises is just basically they're doing the contemplation for me. So you can do both, and you get enough discipline to consistently do both, so that even if you're not having something that really impacts you grace-wise in terms of the affective life and the emotional life and the volitional life, I still always have a steady diet of thought about God. I was listening to a podcast with, I think I mentioned him last time, Father Gregory Pine. And he was talking about how important it is for him to do a holy hour at this point in his life in front of the Blessed Sacrament. Whereas before, he travels a lot, he preaches everywhere. So he would just do a holy hour wherever he is. He's like, even on the plane, he's like, I just put my hood up, I put my mask on, and I just think about God for an hour.
Right.
The way he said it was so interesting. That his holy hour is, I'm just going to go think about God for an hour. Not many people could do that without falling asleep or without running out of material pretty quickly.
Like Father Gober. I mean that's like an Ambien.
Well, he tried.
You put a mask on and a hood up.
That's
true. Out.
Yeah, God for him is Benadryl, isn't it?
I don't. That's a whole different kind of. Talk about a modus. That's a whole different language that he's got going on there.
Yeah, the Lord deals with him. It's like a steady, slow decline into Calvary.
It's like when he goes kayaking, he thinks that the right thing to do is to turn sideways and gently go down these little rumbles, when in fact that's precisely the wrong thing to do.
Yeah.
You dive into it if you want to come out safely, which is why every time he would roll over, which is why he's completely sworn off water sports. Because apparently you did with him.
We almost got him killed.
And then the kayaks was a follow-up. I mean, but he has all the wrong instincts.
Yeah. Done with water.
So,
yeah, because instincts for comfort don't get you through these things.
Exactly.
It's the same with skiing. I mean, skiing's counterintuitive, right?
It is.
You actually have to be aggressive to be in control.
Yep. Yeah. You can't just sidestep it.
Yeah. How do we get a sidestep it? Where are we? What were we talking about?
That's a really good question. It always goes back to Father Gober. I don't know. It was something about you lost me. It was something about how we relate to God and. See, this is it. Gober is Father Gober is a distraction. Look what he's doing to us.
It's true. We should excise him from our life. He probably would like that, so he wouldn't show up on the show all the time. He gets his informants to let him know that we're talking about him.
Oh, I know.
I think he secretly likes it.
Do you?
I do. Oh, yeah.
There's a big ego under that.
Actually not.
I know.
I'll give him that one.
Not there.
Yeah.
It's definitely not.
Well, we're just talking about the ways in which we can have if we can discipline our thought life.
Like we just did.
To spend, exactly.
Losing our train of thought.
Sidebar. To practice the thinking about God.
Yeah.
Even if you're not saying much to him, you can say something to him. You should say something to him. But then you can also just think about him and think about, in this case, what was that time period like when the apostles would see him, when Our Lady would see him, and how, imagine having your whole life rearranged by the one you encountered. Everything's different, and then he's dead. And the utter anguish and despair of that, despite what he told them, and then he's back. I mean, the kind of excitement of the nascent church, to tap into that in this period.
I mean, this is kind of my point earlier. You just said it. Imagine this. I think the really stretching and the expanding of the imagination is so critical. I mean, especially when it's one thing when you're coming into the faith, coming into the fullness of the church, and you're presented with just a barrage of images, devotions, iconography that you're saturated in them, you're swimming in them. And you feel as though you never were going to run out of them. And in a certain sense, you don't. But the thoughts that they evoke, because these icons lead to something, right? They're a window into something else. That's where the imagination has to do its work. And so at some point, a statue is just a statue. You begin to recognize it's what I see through it.
For sure.
But when you first get into faith, the image itself is so communicative that it evokes. But over time, that what it evokes in you tends to be it needs a response of your imagination to go deeper, so that you can pass through that window, pass through that icon into the deeper realities, which is going to rely upon your study of the faith, your reading of scripture, all these other things, or paying attention to life, being reflective and having some sense of purpose. And then everything becomes kind of grist for the mill. And all of this, of course, requires this use of imagination. Now, obviously, St. Thomas has a lot to say about the important role in the intellectual process of the use of the imagination. And I'm not sure if he defines it differently than the way in which we're talking about it now, but he certainly has it as a significant element in how, in our cognition. Is that fair to say?
Sure. Yeah, it is. I mean, I think one of the important things about the imagination is that as an image-making faculty, it's basically taking, you and I, every time we know anything, we're pulling from things that exist in the world, right, through our senses. And insofar as that, I'm seeing the intelligible structure of this thing, this whatness, this cup, this table, this whatever. And then I have it in me as a kind of form, but in a universal sense, so that you and I can have a conversation and talk about tables and cups and trees, not just this one. But then the imagination puts it back into matter, so to speak, right? Your concept of a tree, but if you're thinking about the tree that our Lord was next to in the Garden of Gethsemane, now it's particularized again. And every time we have any cognition of anything, should that cognition be of something that is good and fitting and convenient to the appetite that we have, the appetite's going to fire. So if I think about a chocolate chip cookie right now, my appetite's going to fire. That's appetite used in that strictly singular sense of just the stomach, but if I think about anything, if it's presented to myself, even my imagination, as something appropriate and fitting, good, then it's going to fire. So when we're thinking about Christ, if we think about Christ and the scenes of the gospel or Blessed Mother, whatever else, and we don't present him to our own mind as he really is, hence the necessity of having an orthodox faith, it's not going to attract the will. Not a small piece. You're not going to be attracted by it. If you have an image of him that's wrong, you might be afraid of him. You might be bored by him. You might be whatever, but true Christ is only going to attract.
But see, this is why genuine encounters with God, they correct the errors of the imagination.
Yep. Genuine encounters and orthodox understanding.
Sure. Without doubt. I mean, that's the part that I think most Catholics, intentional Catholics, do on a regular basis. They're taking in the doctrines of the faith and they're trying to, receive it interiorly and shapes and forms their the use of their imagination is engaged to create that true image or a truer likeness to whatever the thing it is that you're considering.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time you saw like the Passion? I remember for me it was so impactful, not because everything in there is exactly how it happened or whatever. It's just it's one man's meditation on the Passion, and of course he's using Mary of Agreda and Catherine Emmerich and other persons that have visions of things. But it's done obviously very, very artistically.
Very artfully, yeah.
But I remember getting home from that, and not exactly a movie you have popcorn with.
Nope.
Or no one said a word when it was over. Everyone stayed to the end of the credits because they didn't want to face each other.
Well, nobody, right. I mean, people are weeping.
Yeah, and I drove home I went with a couple in the parish to go see it. And I remember I got home and I sat down outside on the ground. And I just wept. I've been thinking to myself, I've done something wrong because I don't know you like this. Like, it's so easy to make Christ an abstraction,
Right.
and to study it as I had done. And then, as you said about the corrective nature of genuine encounters, it's going to be consistent with the authentic teaching, but that's just like the borders.
Right.
It's
exactly.
Like you actually encounter him. It's like, oh,
It's got to fit on the bones of the doctrine,
so much more. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, without doubt. And when that becomes in flesh, and again, it requires that use of that imagination constantly, I think. I mean, you and I have been having conversation, as we say, from, start on the rooftop of the seminary since, the mid 90s. And there's a reason why we continue to have new conversation.
Yeah.
We always said we're basically having one really long conversation. It's just never ending. It doesn't end because of this constant exploration. We're constantly engaging our imaginations relative to what it is we believe and what we're experiencing, and we're trying to synthesize. I was always amazed in the material sciences that people not engaged truly in the scientific world would have an almost religious like fervor about science. Believe the science, trust the science. Well, what do you know about science? Well, no, I didn't study that. Well, okay. If you do study it, you recognize.
I don't believe the science.
Well, you're just an oddball. But what you recognize is that we have these sort of consensus that emerge within the scientific community that are filled with error and sometimes fundamentally flawed, as Einstein presented when Newtonian physics went down the drain largely. And you have other earth-shattering type of epiphanies that happen. So why do we have scientific breakthroughs? Not because everything we have a consensus about in the material world is accurate. It's precisely because it's not. That's what we're discovering. Yeah, you can learn more and more about something. Okay, there's a certain evolution there. But usually the breakthroughs are when you have this aha moment and you recognize, wow, matter can turn to energy. Energy can turn to matter. That's just huge. That was not the case before when we talked about conservation of matter in a sort of a pre-Einsteinian way of thinking. Well, that's not true. We know that matter can be annihilated in the sense that it can be converted to energy. And that was mind-blowing. So people who sort of deify the sciences somehow getting everything, has everything figured out, and everything it's figured out is 100% accurate. And then after that, we just layer on more and more and more because we see more things, which is not true at all. And in this sense, we're doing in a life of faith, something very similar. We begin with, certain first principles of the faith and the doctrines of the faith, and that we can accept those as true. And, but then we're trying to synthesize everything together, and we're going to come together. We're going to put together things that are going to be loaded with errors, with really kind of wrong premises and, conclusions. And we're constantly in need of running through them and, of teasing them and testing them. And
talking about those two fonts. I was with someone recently at a dinner, and I was seated next to someone who was not a Catholic, and she offered to tell me that she is receiving communion in the Catholic Church because God told her. And what do you do as a priest? It's a dinner, and I'm not the police. At the same time, she was the one that offered this, and she was very, very adamant that that when Jesus said, "Take this, all of you," he was speaking to her. So I just said, "Well, you're quite right. He was." And there's a method there's a means to go do that. Your means are not the ones, but you need to have the means that the church provides for you to go to that supper, as it were. And she argued for a little bit, but it was that sense of that personal encounter. I'm not trying to doubt that she had one.
No.
But how does it objectively fit into the very means that God has chosen and His own body that governs these things? It's the two things together. I mean, every single heresy is probably either some demonic manifestation or even a wrongly interpreted encounter with.
Right.
Because it's not exactly easy to pin him down.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It is. And that's where I think when I have these, spiritual experiences, like, you have to go back and you have to measure them against what we know through divine revelation. So I remember one time, in particular, I'll be quick because I know we're running out of time. I had a sense over a long duration of adoration, just this sense of returning home. But what bothered me was this notion of returning. There was this implication of feeling, a deep, deep, legitimate feeling that I come from where I'm headed toward God. And from just in a human experience point of view, it almost felt like pre-existence, that
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
I existed before I was born, without getting into important distinctions there, but just this feeling that I had a purpose such that I came here with a purpose, that there was it all implied and felt like a pre-existence.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't have too much difficulty saying, well, I know that's not true. So what is it that I'm feeling that is true?
Yeah.
And I existed in the mind of God. I didn't come into existence apart from the mind of God until He made me.
Right.
And so there is that. There's a sense of purpose. There's a sense of home. And in that sense, insofar as you have a sense of home in heaven where you've never been, of course it's going to feel like homesick, which is going to have the same sensation of I've been there before.
Okay.
So you start to contextualize with sound doctrine what it is that we're feeling, and we begin to make these important distinctions. And it just doesn't throw you for a loop. You don't walk away saying, oh, I know. We existed before we came. And if you actually, listen to a lot of people on YouTube giving testimonies about one thing or the other, they'll take their experience and draw doctrinal conclusions out of them,
Exactly.
which is really not the way it's supposed to work. Bring our
We got her a lot as priests, though.
What's that? You do?
I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to deny that you've had an encounter or experience, but that experience has to be tested by the church herself and shaped by it. And what a blessing. Otherwise,
that we had that possibility of being able to run it through the wash, if you will.
Yeah, for sure.
And then pushes you to make distinctions, because let's face it, experiences, they're not the easiest thing to make distinctions about.
No, that's for sure.
It felt like this and it felt like that.
Right.
Well,
right.
well, how can I draw doctrine out of that?
Right.
That's hard. I don't mean experiences in the sense that St. Thomas would, in the sense that we experience reality in the world, but I mean it in the sense of sensation, emotion.
The whole package. I had this happened to me, and then everything's firing in different ways.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
All right. But I don't want to cut you off. Do you have any final things, either on this topic or your normal before we go?
Well, before we go, the only thing, this is kind of more of a shout out to your mom, because she loves Lupo, and Lupo just turned 6.
Is that right?
Huge hunk of dog that's sitting right next to me right now. That's a seminary dog, but is more or less mine at this point because seminarians graduate, and so I stay here. So he's always with me, Lupo. But we're having a a celebration on April 11th, an open house for our 10th anniversary at the cemetery. So everyone is invited from 11 to 6. And one of our persons that's on the little committee to put this thing on went out and bought a bunch of like little stuffed animal Lupo dolls.
Oh, is that right?
To give to the kids. So it's pretty cute. I kind of want one myself.
I have to get one myself. My mom. I think my mom, whenever she sees that big horse-like dog, Lupo, I think she actually sees its spirit, its animal spirit, which is like a little lap poodle, right? Because she just sees it as being tiny and small, almost like when they're exactly. Almost. Remember when you first got them, how small they were?
Oh, they were so tiny.
I think
they were still this big, right?
Well, right, but they were small, and they were just so adorable. I think she sees them still like
Probably.
that.
No, they're fun dogs.
Hard not to, because they keep that energy about them. That same puppy like
saw right there.
Exactly.
Always looking at me.
Nothing but contentment.
Anyway, so I hope to see you on April 11th.
All right, well, I'll be there.
And
right,
you're actually, because we're doing a live from the rooftop.
Oh, that's right. We should need people know that.
At noon. So if anyone wants to be on the show, we plan to have some other mics in there, and what we'll do is a little bit more of an interactive, I think, from the rooftop.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Now, do you have all the mechanics? Do you have all the?
What we might just simply do is let people ask their own questions or topics, and then we just repeat them and go from there.
Yeah, but when you say live, do you mean like a live stream, or do you mean we're recording it?
Just live insofar as we actually have people there.
Okay, we need to correct our language here. That means just having an in-studio audience. It doesn't mean it's live.
Is that what it is? I don't watch TV.
Well, everybody knows what live means. Live means you're there.
I mean people that are live.
This is not live. It's recorded. So it'll be like,
it's recorded.
We don't have any laugh tracks. We won't do laugh tracks, but we'll see how many laughs we can get when we talk about Father Gober.
What if he'll come? We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know. So I was going to say, you and I, before we started recording today, tried to see how easy it was to find our videos on YouTube. And there were a couple of things that made it difficult. First of all, if you type in "from the rooftop," we don't populate. Now, I'm sure that has to do with the fact that we have dozens of viewers, millions.
That log is getting ticked off.
Yeah, so I'm sure that's driven by that.
On the internet. I mean, it's like it really does clog the internet.
But you have to type in "from the rooftop" tan, and then when you put in tan for Tan Books, then it will populate. And then you discovered that if you separate roof and top, the two, make it into two words, then we don't come up at all. So if it's from the rooftop, we don't show up. If it's from the roof space top, we don't show up. But it really has to be from the rooftop.
I did that with Mariah Carey. Remember her? That's like going back to the 90s.
That is. I mean, that's a fun. I'm getting her mixed up with like Paula Abdul and other.
Maybe I'm too. I don't remember which one she is, but
did she say "from the rooftop, baby"? Is that?
She must have had some kind of song or something. That's the first thing that popped up.
There's something. Yeah, so you have pretty good memory.
So
anyway, I wanted to bring that up just in case if you're telling someone, hey, you should listen to these guys, these two priests. Then if you say look it up on YouTube "from the rooftop," you might have to be a little specific at this point to be able to help them find it. Otherwise, if we're as people listening know, we're also on Audible and all the usual platforms for podcasts. But if you want the video, then I only know through YouTube. I don't know that it's on any other video outlet.
Yeah.
So that's it. I just wanted to offer that thought because I thought it was important to help people find us.
I agree. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thoughtful that way.
I'm the adult in the room.
You're the only one in that room.
All right, then.
Very good.
All right, we'll see you.
Easter tide, and maybe we'll see you in April.
Absolutely. Sounds like a plan.
What makes me wanna scream from the rooftop to the screen?
Thanks for listening to this episode of From the Rooftop.
For updates about new episodes, special guests, and exclusive deals for From the Rooftop listeners, sign up at rooftop.podcast.com.
And remember, for more great ways to deepen your faith, check out all the spiritual resources available at tanbooks.com.
And we'll see you again next time.
From the Rooftop.
Anywhere.